Hello, in this video we're going to be talking a little bit more about complex decision logic structures, some more complex if statements. I realized at the end of the last video that I told you that most of the time I don't include an if without an else, and then I left that code finished with an if statement without an else. So I inadvertently gave you an example of when you might use an if statement without an else, but I am going to continue to build on that same example. So by the time I'm done with that employee bonus example, it will no longer be just a simple if. It will have some else and some other types of statements in there that you'll see. So sometimes one simple yes or no decision isn't enough, and you need to make a more complex decision. There's a few ways to do that. One way to do that is using a nested if. So that's when you have an if statement inside of another if statement. And you can have as many of those levels of ifs within ifs within ifs within ifs as you need. If the outer level returns false, then it doesn't go into those inner levels. It just says if the outside one is true, then we continue. Then it evaluates the inside one. If that's true, then it continues, and so forth. Creating too many levels can get pretty confusing. So try to avoid nested ifs as much as possible. Sometimes you'll have an if within an if. I usually don't go more than 2 levels though, and there are some other ways around it, such as the conditional and or operators, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But let me jump back to an example of the code. So I had started this employee bonus project, so I'm going to open that back up. I open the folder and double click on the .sln file to open up my employee bonus application code in Visual Studio. And that might take a few seconds. All right. So here it opened in the code view. If it opened in design view for you, you can switch it in the view menu. We're going to start in the code view. And I'm going to actually let's go back to design view. So I'm going to make this a little more complex. So I'm going to move this button down. Whoops. And I'm going to add another text box. So let's say that the employee's bonus is dependent on more than one thing. So for one, it's dependent on how many hours the employee worked. And it's also dependent on how many sales they completed. So this second text box, the one I just added, I'm going to rename it to be sales text box and hit enter. And I'm going to put a label and in the text property, I'm going to put please enter number of sales. Okay. So we're going to say that the employee gets a bonus if they work more than 20 hours and they've completed more than three or more sales. So jumping back to the code view, so we've got if the number of hours is greater than 20, they'll get a bonus of $25. But let's say that they will only get the bonus if they have also completed 3 or more sales. So inside of this if statement, I'm going to put another if statement. And I just realized that I can't actually complete that yet. First, what I want to do is I need to get the number of sales, but right now that's just a text value in the text box. So I need to declare a variable, an integer number of sales. I don't think you can do half a sale, and convert that from the text property of the sales text box. So I've taken the string value that's in the sales text box in the text property, converted it to an integer, and called that num sales. So now, back here in my nested if statement, I can do if number of sales is greater than or equal to 3, then in that case, I'm going to cut and paste this. They will get a bonus of 25. Else, their bonus is 0. Okay, so this is a nested if statement. At first, the computer first evaluates the outside statement. If number of hours is greater than 20. If it's not, then it just skips all the way to the end. If it is, then it executes the code that's inside the if block. And part of that is another if statement. So then it evaluates if the number of sales is greater than or equal to 3. If it is, then the bonus is 25. If it's not, then the bonus is 0. Okay, I'm going to run that and see if it works. Okay, so I'm going to test if they had 21 hours and 3 sales, that should be a bonus. Yep, if they had 21 hours but only 2 sales, $0 bonus. If they had 15 hours and 5 sales, no bonus. 30 hours and 5 sales, $25 bonus. Great, so it works. Now, jumping back to the slides, another way that we could do that is instead of using a nested if, we could use the conditional and operator. So we can combine multiple control statements in, we can use multiple control statements in a single if block. So the and operator determines whether 2 separate expressions are both true. So it uses 2 ampersands, and it must include a complete Boolean expression on each side of the operator. So what that means is, here, if I was looking at if number of hours is greater than 20, and I also wanted to compare something else about the hours, like number of hours is less than 40, so they only get a bonus if they work between 20 and 40 hours. Each side, left and right, of the AND operator has to be a complete Boolean expression that can be evaluated as true or false. So this can be evaluated as true or false, and this can be evaluated as true or false. A common mistake is sometimes students do something like this, where they say number of hours is greater than 20 and less than 40. This, to C#, this doesn't make any sense because, yes, this is something that can be evaluated as true or false, number of hours greater than 20, but this is not something that can be evaluated as true or false, less than 40. So it's saying, I don't know what you're asking is less than 40. You have to have a complete expression on both sides of the AND operator. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this code here for when I post it later. I'm going to say using the nested if approach. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. Give a bonus if they worked more than 20 hours and had 3 or more sales, not more than 3 because it's greater than or equal to 3. 3 or more sales. Okay, but in this case, I'm going to use the conditional and operator instead of nested if. So this code that I had before, I'm actually going to comment out so that the C# doesn't try and run it, but it will be there if you download the code as a reference. But I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did here, but using the AND operator instead. So here I'm going to say if the number of hours is greater than 20 and the number of sales is greater than or equal to 3, then the bonus is 25. For any other combination, we'll say the bonus is 0. So now I'm going to test that out. 22 and 3 sales get the bonus. 18 and 3 sales don't get the bonus. 18, 56 hours, only 1 sale, no bonus. So both of those things have to be true in order for the entire control statement to be evaluated as true. Okay. Now, whoops, I want to jump back to the slides. So that's the AND operator. You also have the OR operator. Okay, so this is showing some different scenarios of AND. Both of them have to be true. If X is true and Y is true, then X and Y is true. Any other combination, it's evaluated as false. You can also use the OR operator, which is the double vertical lines. The vertical line on your keyboard is right above the Enter key. If you hold down Shift and press the button or the key on your keyboard that also has the backslash on it, that's the pipe or the vertical line. For the OR operator to be evaluated as true, only one of the two has to be true. So if X is true, doesn't matter if Y is true or not. The entire control statement will be evaluated as true. The only way that X, line Y will be evaluated as false is if both of them are false. So I've left a few tips, what I thought were the most useful figures and exercises from the textbook in these slides. You do not need to know short circuit evaluation. Short circuit evaluation is when you use the single ampersand or the single pipe, which is legal, but they have kind of weird side effects. You really, as a beginner, don't need to use those, so stick to the double ampersand or the double pipes. And before I end this particular video, let me just show you an example. So if we modified this so that these ands became ors, now the employee would get a bonus if they had more than 20 hours, no matter how many sales they got. They would get a bonus if they had at least 3 sales, no matter how many hours they worked. Because if either one of these is true, then the entire thing together will be evaluated as true, and it will execute whatever is in the if block. All right, so that's my short video on conditional operators and nested ifs. Please go through more examples from the textbook and I'll also provide another example in my review session. Come back for the next video, the part 3 video. We'll give a brief introduction of how and when to use switch statements instead of if statements.